My name is Theodore Cottingham. I am a simple, common guy in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, USA. And I'm starting a school to Christ the Christ. The reason I'm doing so is that I have been instructed to do so, compelled to do so. I have been writing the words of the new covenant that's come through me for all who will value from them for many years. You see, I was a very devout Christian for many years, but in 1988 I began spending an hour a day in prayer, not studying Bibles or commentaries. I began to learn to pour out my heart to God. I would go into the little chapel every morning and kneel down. And so many times at some point during that hour, I felt like, if you will, I felt like God almost, as it were, took my hand for me to stand up. And I began to stand up and pray and walk and pray. And I had no idea what was to come forth. But I continued. And then one day, I felt like God spoke to me and said, "Will you give me your mornings?" I share a lot more about that in some other recordings. But I began to spend my mornings in Tulsa at Trinity Episcopal Church. I would target 8 to noon, 5 days a week. I didn't make it there all the time, but that was my target, and that became my custom. And as I would spend that time, I learned very quickly I didn't seem to have the capacity to pray for 4 hours. So I would often come in and pray as all I knew to do, and then be silent. I didn't have a guru, a guide. I was just a simple guy on my own. And so many times I spent time there. And then one day there was a phrase that came to me, and I thought this may be, I felt like there was more to it than my common thought process. And I went and grabbed a tablet and pen that I had close by and started writing. And I wrote several pages. As soon as I wrote the first phrase, I had the second phrase and the second sentence. And I was guiding my hand. I was writing the words, but the energy, the words, I did not originate the diction and grammar that I used. God was using the diction and grammar, the definitions that I had, and it wasn't long. Well, I did that the first day, and I didn't know what to do with it. I don't think I even told anyone. I was pretty excited though. I went back to my office and read it several times. And then a few days later, I wrote several more pages that I say are the first person words of God that begin to instruct me and teach me things that I didn't know. began to challenge me about my definitions, and I began to realize I felt like God was pouring out the heart of God to me, and I was writing it day by day. About the first 8 years of that, I wrote and recorded 2,400 messages, the first person words of God, for all peoples who want to access them, learn from them, and do the same thing. Where, if you want to, you begin to learn that God will teach you as you surrender to write the first person words. I began to be taught that Christ was not just one person that we attribute some power or special powers to of the past, but the heart of God is for every person to be the Christ. The Christ that learns the heart of God, for God to form the heart of God in each person, seamless. So as the words of God come into us, into our mind, and we write them, it's a transformation process where we are creating the connections, the understanding, and the revelation, experiencing to become one mind. The desire of God, according to the words I've written from God, is for all to be one, so that we are not the consciousness of a human in separation from God. And so as I wrote, it wasn't long before there were many words about schools and to start a school. I'm going to read you just a couple of paragraphs of something I wrote early on. Most of my life I went by the name Ted. My name is all in these words. I was instructed to never remove them, to understand. God said, tell each one, I will call their name. I will speak to them personally just like this. I will guide. Just 2 short paragraphs. Tell them, Ted, lead and raise up the leaders, the schools that are in your heart. They will come forth, Ted, for I am linking you with many leaders. I am linking you with many of my leaders, captains and generals and lieutenants, and peoples of all roles of leadership in my body, who have paid a price to know my voice and seek me for what I want to do through them. There are many, Ted, that will let me speak to them and use them and will obey my voice, that have been waiting for leadership and leaders from my throne who will lead them and not abuse them. Love them and increase their freedom rather than rob it and stomp them, as some have done in my name in the past. Teach and train and move now, even now, to establish the school of schools in your heart. I will bring those to help you, and I will provide for you, and I will provide for them. The schools and the networks are of me, and people are coming now from all over to help. And you help them take positions of power to propel their initiatives, which I am designing and laying upon your heart and hands. Tender be with my people, I bring you. Tender, fathering them in great joy, love, tenderness, gentleness. This is just a couple of paragraphs. You see, the first person words of God will come through you if you will write them. If you will surrender to learn how to write the first person words of God. And God will teach you about all things, not just what so many call spiritual things. So that's why I'm standing here. The heart of God is to impart the heart of God. It's the operation of the new covenant, where God said, I will come and write my heart. And they will know me and not need another person to teach them. This is all about a new beginning, new things, the new covenant, God teaching directly in a paradigm of power where we begin to realize the heart of God and realize Jesus as the pattern for our lives and for every life who surrenders to begin to know God in the power of the resurrection, the power of intimacy, where God teaches directly into your heart. My name is Theodore Cottingham. As I began to write these words, even years ago, I tried to start a school. And at that time, I called it the University of the New Covenant. Several times over the years, I have tried to make known these words, these first-person words of God that seem to pour out God's heart and call each person to know God on a new basis, a basis of intimacy, where you're at the table of one, where God instructs you personally and you write the words. You learn to speak the words and record them and learn from them in a system of education that actually transforms the mind that is within us to become one with the mind of God, not separate. Raising up people who will operate in the paradigm of love. And love is not powerless. Love heals. Love is tender. Love does not condemn. Love creates, and this is what I'm about. So this is a short recording, I think, for short, that I'm sharing with you. Why I'm doing what I'm doing. For you to come into the knowledge of Christ, to be the Christ. This may sound really far out, but what if it's correct? It may sound radical, but I would ask you to ask God if this is right. Is Jesus the pattern for my life? Am I to do the works that Jesus did? We know in John 14:12, Jesus said, if you believe in me, you will do the works that I do, and greater. Jesus was the firstborn to become a newborn Christ. And what I'm given is the heart of God is to teach people directly. So that changes a lot of things on earth. And I suggest to you that many people who know God's voice will begin to learn the system of education through God's voice to become the leader, a leader of leaders, for this to occur. And schools will be raised up many places for the way God comes is through the heart and makes known the values of the heart of God. This is all about a process of education that is not just about religious or spiritual things. You can imagine if I wrote, if just the first database that I have been given is 2,400 messages, the first person words of God, with about an average of, say, 4 single-space typed pages of each one. That's thousands of pages. There are references, definitions, links, to everything from simply being tender and kind to every person, keeping your word, to quantum physics, the cosmos, the origination of light, who we are, and what our capacity is to become born again, being a new creation, not limited to this world, so that we walk on this earth in healing to heal it, healing each other in love for each other, so that everyone begins to know the message and experience the choice to allow God to teach them directly. I don't have all the answers. I'm a simple guy. I surrendered to let God speak through me. I surrendered to write the first person words of God for years. And all the words that I have are not perfect. And God addressed that. God even said, tell them when they ask you if all the words I have given you are perfect, tell them they are perfect enough. So there is this body of material that is the heart of God that God has given me. And you choose whether it has any value to you or not. Those 2,400 lessons, that's what God called them. He said, these are my lessons in my school. Let them know. Tell them to pick up their pen and I will write through them like this. These lessons are online. And these lessons form the basis of the curriculum for the school that I am starting. You see, how to surrender, how to receive these words, and how to learn from them. God gave me in first-person words that's in the database. There's a system. God called it lessonating. That every one of these recordings is a lesson. And he began to say how to eat these words, lessonate, as you write them, then to read them, how to underline important points and link them and how these linkages cross days, sometimes weeks, where a subject is introduced, expanded upon maybe on page 2, several paragraphs about it on page 4, and nothing for a week. And then all sorts of things. And it's an assembling process. I did not control this process. This process is not controlled by logic. I learned very quickly to not try for words to come that confirmed what I thought. So many times, especially early on, there were times when I kind of had this consciousness and I was writing, and all of a sudden I realized, boy, that's not like anything I've known, heard. That is like opposite of what I thought, the way I interpreted a Bible verse or something. And if I stopped to think about, wait a minute, is that right? The flow would stop. It would be interrupted. And I would come back and surrender and just simply reread some of the sentences, and sometimes it would come right back. And I would continue to write, picking up at that point. There were other times I did that subject, all of a sudden, when I started writing again, changed. Like a gap. And so I learned not to edit. I was instructed not to edit, not to try to make God answer what I wanted answered. And yet, in surrender, all these words came. Thousands of pages that I've written that form this database that forms the curriculum of the school I'm starting for common people just like me to learn, to experience Christ, to be Christ. Christ the anointed, Christ the surrendered, to do the work, letting God speak through you. Christ, whatever you want to call it. Light that's love. So this is why I'm starting a school. This is the basis for the curriculum, those 2,400 messages. And I have taught many videos, made many teaching videos about that and about what God is doing in the earth. God said, start the school, and I will bring people. I will bring people who know my voice. I will bring people who will help start schools and create, literally, verbatim, create the schools they go through. So this is a process unlike any other. This is something new. And I believe people are coming and creating a community with communication that is not limited to our minds that we've operated with. I love you, and I'll talk more about this. I ask you to be curious about what I'm saying. Ask God if there's any value in what I'm saying, because you're the decision maker. I'm not trying to present persuasive evidence or be persuasive in an argument. I'm saying the new covenant is about you. The new covenant is about God teaching you directly, raising up your leadership for common people to become Christ, healing the earth again. And this is my message to you this day. I love you. If you want to access the database 1, the 2,400 messages, they're all online and searchable at uoflight.org. 2,400 first-person words of God that have come through me for those who want to learn, to flow the new covenant through them, to write theirs. It's not just about learning what I wrote. It's about you writing the first-person words of God in the education of one. My name is Theodore Cottingham. I'm at Box 34 in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, USA. The website for the school is actually at another site at the moment, theschoolofgod.us. I love you. Write me if you like. Ask God. Learn to write the first-person words of God. Be Christ in your shoes. I love you. Good day. Thank you for listening and sharing these words with who you think they might be of value to. Good day.